Boys must be boys.
Boys must be
and
boys.
This is,
They learned recently how to play gun to your head, so now they do that with me. Have you ever you've played that again, right?
No.
That game. Gun to your head. Who would you rather have sex with? An autistic dude, a midget, or Jay Leno? You know what I mean?
that's what that is?
Yeah,
Oh,
gun
I
to your
didn't know.
head. And by the way, Jay Leno would be third. Anyway.
I never played that shit.
You never
Gun to
played
your head.
that game?
It drives me crazy when people ask me like what if type questions. What do you think, dog, if Godzilla fought, Rocky? What do you fucking talk? Only people talk like that at 4 a.m. when they're coked out. That's the only time people hit you with that type of shit.
Yeah.
What if Burt Bacharach got together with Led Zeppelin? Would that be a great fucking band? And you're like, why are we talking about that?
Burt Bacharach.
Yeah, you remember Burt Bacharach? He's a fucking savage. You know what I'm saying? That's it, Felicia. How was your weekend? What's going on in your life?
Well, I was on the road, and then I was gone. I was only gone like 3 days, but it felt like fucking forever. When 3 days feels like forever, and you're sitting in the hotel room, and you're watching reruns of Game of Thrones, and you're thinking, wow, I could really fuck that midget up. God damn, that's a sexy midget.
What the fuck has happened to our lives? What the fuck? When you're 20, remember when you were 20 and they called you to go do comedy, go do anything? You could pack, be ready in 10 minutes, no sleep, no nothing. You didn't give a fuck. Now you have to prepare for a trip. That's the age I'm to. I've been sleeping. I'm going to Miami tomorrow, and I'm in fucking Anxietyville.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not about the shows or whatever, just about leaving. I've been home for 8 fucking weeks.
Yeah.
So just leaving and driving to LAX tomorrow
The first
at 2.
week is hard.
Oh my God. I remember when I used to do this every week. This was like nothing. This was like a machine. So what? Going to the airport and getting on a plane is like shitting when you're a comedian. It gets to that simple. You break it down. Oh, I just got to take a flight. Most people got to pack a fucking sandwich and water and oxygen. They got to take insurance out. We just rock and roll, bitch, on any airline, Somebody calls you the night before. How many times did you get a call the night before? I remember when I first got here and I was broke. There was a club in El Paso. They still there. These motherfuckers would call me on Monday night at 8 to be there at Tuesday night. You didn't have $108 to fly in those days as a feature act. All they paid was $550. I remember taking the Greyhound bus, the 1140 Greyhound bus, which gets you into El Paso at 1. You don't know what life is till you get on that bus on LAX, whatever the fuck it is, downtown LA, and you got to take the all-nighter to El Paso. And there's some buses that you get on there 11 and you wake up and you're there. This is after you wake up, you got to sit there with bad breath and rotten ass.
Oh, yeah.
For 5 or 6 fucking hours until destination El Paso, and they got to come get you. And it is horrid. It is such a great jump the day you go from riding a bus to taking a plane when you're a comedian. It's such a relief. At first you're like, I love to drive. What are you talking about? I could drive. Fuck, that shit gets old quick. Fuck that shit. Yeah. I won't drive to San Jose no more. I'm like on a 3-hour zone now. You got my attention for 3 hours. After 3 hours, I can't fucking drive no more.
Would you? I want to let my kids fly by themselves, but the ex isn't into that. But I'm like, fuck. When I was a kid, I used to take the bus all the time by myself. Took the bus from Colorado to LA in the middle of the night, dodging the molester by the bathroom, gambling in Vegas. I was like 11 years old. You know what I mean? It was a fucking adventure.
My mother used to put me on the plane from Newark to LAX by myself. And in those days, you had to give the stewardess a 20, and she'd sit you on the first seat, whether it was first class or not. You'd sit right there, and they give you a wing. They give you a pilot's fucking hat, crayons. They gave you a ton of shit. You were excited about fucking flying. One of those trips back from El Paso was the scariest fucking bus ride I ever had back, because there's 2 systems from LAX to El Paso. There's either the regular bus system or there's the Mexican La Jarabamba bus. Which is $35, and they got Telemundo on the whole fucking time. You know what I'm saying? You got your own little private television.
You get back to LA and learn Spanish. Pretty cool. So one time I'm coming back from El Paso, and some guy I'm at the club the night before said to me, bro, you're pretty funny. And he gives me an envelope, but I thought it was weed. When you have weed, you're like, fuck it, perfect for the bus ride. So I wrap it up, I go in my pocket. The next day I get up, I go to the bus ride. And I get to the El Paso bus thing, and I open up the thing in the back, and it's a fucking Coke Rock that is as shiny as a fucking diamond, right? So I fucking get on. I'm excited. I'm going to do coke the whole night on the bus. This is fucking great. We'll pull over. I'll smoke a few cigarettes, drink a beer. This is fucking jamming. I break the coke rock up, and I do fucking like 2 lines, and I'm on the back, and it's kind of cold. You know, everybody has like hooded sweatshirts on and jackets. And I'm sitting there, you know, with like whatever, the hooded sweatshirt, the jacket. And I do like 2 more lines. And all of a sudden, as you come out of El Paso, there's a fucking security thing where they come on the bus with dogs and shit
really?
like that. And I'm like, oh my God. So now I got the paranoia in me. My heart's beating. I'm like, what am I going to do now? I'm an old school motherfucker. There ain't no way I'm flushing coke. Like, I've done enough of that in the 80s. It's 95. I ain't flushing it out. I'm a soldier. I'll hold on to that shit to the end. I'll put it in my asshole if I have to. I don't give a fuck. I flushed ounces one time, and it killed me the next day. It was like, what'd I do that for? But, so I said, fuck it. I'll just do the whole pile. Oh. And I did the whole pile. The dog was just getting on. I just did the whole pile. And I was in the back of the bus. And I'll never forget that they opened the doors, you know, and it was windy and it was cold. And by the time they got back to me, I was down to like a wife beater. I was sweating, and they're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, nothing, you know what I'm saying? That coke kept me up the whole 8 hours. Like, people were freezing on the bus the whole night. I'm sitting there with a wife beater, steam's coming out of me on this fucking bus. And that's the last time I took the El Paso bus. We're back, bitches! Beauty and the Beast podcast for Alicia Michaels.
Joey Diaz.
What's happening, you sexy motherfucker?
Well, we have a guest in the
yes,
studio.
We do.
And as we're telling these stories, I look over to him and he's like, what did I get myself into?
No, he's such a nice guy. He didn't expect this shit. He's like, I thought this was like a writer's forum. You guys are talking about smuggling coke from El Paso and shit. Jeff Sherman in the fucking house.
Yay.
Jeff Sherman, I've been trying to get you on the show for like 2 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because remember I went to your house that one day and we talked about it, and I called you and I missed you, and then Felicia, and then I went out of town, and then I had the surgery, so it's kind of rough. For people who don't know, Jeff Sherman's a very good friend of mine. He's a producer. He's a writer. He taught me how to fucking write. You know, he would sit with me and listen to my stories and tell me what was important. We wrote a script together for the great super agent Jim Kellum. Jim Kellum, JKA, above the wig shop. You understand? If you want to save on the what do you call that when you give a retainer? If you want to save on the retainer, call him Jimmy Wiggs and get 10% off your commission on your first script sold. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you saw what I did with my poster, right? He wanted an Au Pair 3 poster. So I did these movies, Au Pair 1, 2, and 3. So he said, I really need a poster. And he bugged me about it forever. And so I drop it off at his office. He said, could you get it mounted? I said, sure. So I went and I got it mounted for him. And he said, can you put it in a frame? I said, no, I'm stopping at the mounting. He said, well, you have to sign it for me. I said, okay. So I was so pissed off at that point. I wrote, to Jim Kellum, the greatest agent, ... above a wig shop.
Above the wig
That's
shop.
what it says on if you go in his office.
For Jimmy Wiggs.
You know, Jim Kellum was my first agent ever.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't even know he was my agent until I was already sitting at a network meeting with 20 other agents around me.
Oh.
Yeah, and they were like, no, it's that guy over there.
Oh, really?
So you were at APA at the time?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know until I, was sitting down there, yeah. But that's true. And then he showed up.
He's a secret agent. That's what
he is a secret agent. Jim Kellum. You know, it's so weird that everybody knows him. I've known him for years. And he just cracks me up. You know, you have a comment, like you pitch him something, like, you're like, Jim, can I talk to you about something? Yeah, listen, I have an idea about Puerto Rican midgets that invade a country in Mars. And he'll look at you and he'll also take his glasses off and he'll go through his Rolodex. Get Johnny Bananas on the phone, please. And I'll say, Johnny Bananas here. Excuse me, Johnny, it's Jim Kellum. I have an idea about Puerto Rican Martians. I mean, no idea is never gone on. All right, we'll meet here at the office, 10 o'clock Monday. Diaz, yourself. We'll put this, okay, network, bye. And then you never hear from him again once you walk out that office. One of the reasons why we had Jeff on here, and this is very rough. I mean, I've known Jeff for years. I wanted to bring Jeff on for Jeff because I fucking dig you, Jeff. You're a bad motherfucker. You make me laugh. He's so nonchalant, but he's always fucking thinking with his little jacket on and stuff. A couple of years ago, Jeff and I and his partner were going to write a pilot, and me and Jeff, we connected. It was myself, you, and your partner, and we were talking about a pilot about a guy who meets a rich guy, and a guy like me who meets a rich guy and changes his life. And your eyes perked right up, and you were talking about how your father was a very important guy, but he went to Mexico one time, and there was a guy that he shouldn't have been friends with. Excuse me, and then ended up becoming great friends. And so you understand the combination I was talking about. And you and I got together, and we wrote this, and we did it all summer. And you'd feed me on Monday nights. We'd eat cheese, and it was fucking great, you know? Getting to see the writer's perspective. When you're a fucking dirty comic, you know, to get to see how real people do it. And then one day he comes to me and he goes, hey, man, can you do me a favor? Are you busy Wednesday night? No. Can you come to this documentary I shot about my dad? I'm like, your fucking dad? I don't know. Your dad? Sure, I'll go. You know, you're my brother. I'll go see your documentary. And I sat there. I didn't know what to expect. You know, you don't know what the hell is going on. Like, you expect a guy about a musical, right, and whatever. I left there. My head was blown away. I would have sucked your dick. Just because of your bloodline. You know what I'm saying? Just because of your fucking bloodline, I think I would have sucked your dick. Because I didn't know this, and you had never said these things to me. Anytime you move to Hollywood, you meet people, and the first thing they throw at you is who they're related to, whatever. You had never said it to me.
Well, my dad was like that, too. My dad is Robert Sherman, one of the Sherman brothers, who wrote a lot of the scores for the Disney movies back in the 60s, like Mary Poppins, Jungle Book, Winnie the Pooh, the Aristocats, Bedknobs and Broomsticks. I'll probably repeat stuff. But they also started way earlier together. In 1951, they sold the song to Gene Autry, their first song, and it went on from there. They ended up writing songs like You're 16, You're Beautiful, and You're Mine.
For Ringo Starr.
Well, they wrote it actually originally, and Johnny Burnett recorded it, and it went to number one, and then it went to number one again. I think it's one of the only songs that ever went to number one twice. Then went again with Ringo. But the movie that he's talking about is called The Boys, the Sherman Brothers story, and it's about my dad and uncle, who, as I mentioned, wrote all these songs, and they wrote screenplays. They wrote half the songs at Disneyland. They wrote, I'm always afraid to say it because somebody always takes a swing at me, but they wrote It's a Small World After All, and a Tiki Room song, and you walk down Main Street, all you do is you hear their music, and at Disneyland.
All right, I have a confession.
Sure.
The confession is, a few months ago, I said to Joey, I just saw this amazing documentary on HBO. It was on HBO,
on
right?
Stars. Yeah.
Oh, on Stars. And it was that documentary,
really?
and I was so blown away with it. And Joey was like, that's Wendy Liebman's husband. That was his father. And I was like, get the fuck. And that you made it. And it was, it really blew me away. I mean, the whole relationship between the brothers. And when you can understand how many songs they wrote that impacted so many children and adults alike. I mean, it's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me was I knew my dad really well, but as you were saying before, the way I am was the way my dad was. If you never knew what he did, he kept his awards all up in his bathroom. He had nine Academy Award nominations. He won 2, but he had all the certificates up in his bathroom. The Oscars were over his sink. His Grammys and his gold record, everything was up in his bathroom. It was a great place, but nobody ever went up there because he just didn't want to brag about it. And one day my mother got tired of it, and she said, screw this, and she enclosed a patio and created this room that was called either a den or the Blue Room is what I always heard it was called. And she put everything down there so people, when they walked in the house, it was like the first thing you saw. My dad was always a little embarrassed, but he just really never cared that much about it. For him, really, he wasn't the Hollywood guy. My uncle was sort of the Hollywood guy. If you went to their 2 parties, my uncle would be like playing a piano, and it was exactly what you'd expect for a songwriter. My dad would have like intellectuals over to the house, and novelists and professors, and occasionally a celebrity or 2, but they were always there to just sort of have. It wasn't Hollywood night. It was just wonderful, and you loved sitting with these people that were brilliant. People who produced the old Alfred Hitchcock show, and just old timers, just fantastic people.
At what age did you realize that your father was this person?
Well, it's interesting because I would hear all the songs before anybody heard them, so they were kind of like, it was weird. It was like I didn't really get it, and he was so humble about it. He really wouldn't explain it, what was going on. I'm not even sure he knew himself. He just really loved the work. But I was right after Mary Poppins came out and they won the 2 Oscars that night. About 2 months later, they held a daytime concert for kids at the Hollywood Bowl. And it was filled. It was just full of kids, and it was all Sherman Brothers music. So they'd written things at that point like Sword in the Stone, that animated film. They'd done a few other things, but Mary Poppins, so they played the whole score of Mary Poppins. And right near the end, we were all sitting in a box. There's a picture I saw when we were making the documentary, because I didn't know it existed, but there was a picture of us, and we're sitting in one of the boxes. And the conductor turns around and goes, and the two gentlemen, the Sherman brothers, are here today, and would you guys stand up? They stood up, the concert ended. They were supposed to play more. They couldn't. The place, it was like the Beatles were there. Everybody came over to our box and surrounded us, and I was signing autographs. They said, I said, I'm nobody. And they said, so I'd write like his son, as a joke or something like that. But that's, I think, the first time I realized it was so right there.
What year was this?
65.
Wow.
How old were you?
I was 8.
Wow.
And that was really the first time I think that happened. And then, sadly he passed away a couple weeks ago. And I was telling Joey this. What happened was Wendy and I, my wife Wendy Liebman, we were sitting in my living room. It was about 9:00 at night, and we got a phone call at night, which we usually don't get, and it was my brother who lived in London with my dad, and he said, Dad just passed away. So we were watching The Voice or something, and I turned it off, and Wendy had been texting her sister up in San Francisco, and mentioned that my dad had just passed away. So I go to my office, and I sit down, I turn on, my Facebook's on my screen, and I look, and I see R.I.P. Robert B. Sherman. Her sister had just written that on my Facebook page. I went, I gotta put out some kind of a statement about this, and it's that I don't want people to start questioning. I want to do it, so I quickly kind of composed myself and put together this very short little announcement. And the next night, Wendy and I were watching Diane Sawyer on ABC, the national news. And at the end of it, she does this tribute to my father where she shows clips from The Boys. She shows me as a little boy bobbing around in the backyard and tells the Spoonful of Sugar story. And then reads my Facebook entry. Diane Sawyer's, and this is like 18 hours later. And I realized that I think even after I made this movie, and I went all over the world, we were in 19 film festivals all over the world. I traveled with it. People all over the world knew them, all different ages, all kinds of cultures. But I still didn't really get it until the flurry of outpouring of love and respect for this guy that came out. It was really beautiful and moving for me.
Wow.
Every place. I mean, the people were writing to me in Italian and Russian, and they were just writing into me and wanting to express their love for my dad, which is nice.
The fucking songs. I mean, when you watch the documentary and you see Jungle Book, and you see Dick Van Dyke, like I told you, Dick Van Dyke was my idol. So when I went to see this, and it wasn't even, it was the music, it was the way they lived. If you watch the documentary, but it was the little things, like what you told me, that McDonald's had gone to him and asked him, to try out the burgers or whatever, food.
They were hired as advisors to McDonald's at a certain point, and they went out. My dad wrote 2 things. It was funny because my dad, when we were doing the documentary, he gave me this box. He said, you'll probably find some interesting things in there. And I found 16mm film of my great-grandparents. I mean, things that you never, and it was pristine. Some of it's in the movie. But there was this one little white box, and I showed it to my cousin because it was a McDonald's commercial. They wanted him to comment on it, my uncle and him. And so my dad wrote 2 things. One I can't say. And the other one was, he said people... he wrote 3 things. One I won't say. He said people shouldn't be eating on camera because it's disgusting. It's like in his scribble. And the third thing he wrote was McNuggets, because they just come out with these chicken pieces and they were trying to figure out a name. And he said to them in the meeting, he said, you should brand everything like, McDonald's, McNuggets, and they got very quiet. It was the advertising company. And they said, everything that you say in this room belongs to the McDonald's Corporation. And so he said, fine. He didn't know. And, went on to be everything was, it still is.
What I liked about the movie, and I'm just going to go ahead and be bold about this, it was not only everything that they did, but it was also about the relationship between the two brothers. And I think that's
what sold
the
it,
thing that sold it to me, because it spoke to anybody who has a sibling where you have a difficult relationship, but also a working relationship, and that's your co-witness in life. You know what I mean? Like it was a really beautiful story from that end of it. That must have been very difficult to strike a balance when you were telling that story.
That was the toughest part of the whole thing, because everybody, even I would say what you see in that documentary is 85% of the story. The other 15% I was not allowed to tell because of certain attorneys that came in between us. And just really to not, as my dad said, there's a very slippery slope. And if you say this about my brother, he's going to say this, and you're not going to have a movie. So we went as far as we could. We pushed as far as we could. We were very honest. There's just some more personal kind of, the stuff that you just don't, the mommy dearest stuff that you don't want to know. I think, maybe one day I'll write about it now that my dad's gone. I'm not sure, because it does explain a lot. But I mean, the main thing with the two brothers that I found interesting was, it's not unusual for siblings to fight, especially siblings that are in business together. But to be able to do that for 60 years, which they did, had a partnership for 60 years and create all these beautiful, over 1,000 published songs.
I know, that is just so amazing.
And they're all uplifting. They shared. They knew that they were both halves of a whole. They would fight like, I'll tell you a great story it's not in the movie in a minute, but they would fight and fight. But once the music started, it was magical. I was with them. I produced a show with them. Back in the 80s, 84 and 85 for the Disney Channel. The way I sold the show was I went into Disney Channel, which had just started. My dad took me to some opening thing. I went to the head of it and I said, I've got a show I want to pitch. I went in a couple weeks later. It was one of the first shows on the Disney Channel. It was called The Enchanted Musical Playhouse. And I did it in partnership with the Osmonds, with Jimmy and Donnie Osmond. And Marie Osmond was our first star. She was the Velveteen Rabbit. They were half-hour musicals based on children's classics. So we were doing it at the same time Shelley Duvall did those fairy tale theaters. So hers took off. We did 4.
Hey, you did 4 though.
Yes, but it was really cool for me because all my life I'd gone to recording sessions with 120 instruments and John Williams or Irwin Costal conducting, or I'd go to the movie sets, or I'd go around the studio lot and see whatever they were doing. But I'd actually never sat with them when they created. I'd hear things afterward. I'd go up to their office a lot, and my uncle would play me some of the songs they were writing, but I'd never seen them actually do it, and I've certainly never worked with them. So when I sold this, I was going to be producing with the Osmonds and then also writing the scripts, and they were going to write the songs. So we had between 3 and 4 songs in every show. So the first one's The Velveteen Rabbit, and I was really interested to find out how it worked. So I was really excited. And I said, Dad, so how do I do this with you guys? And he said, well, what you have to do is get 3 of the same exact book, drop one at your uncle's house, drop one with me, and you keep one. And I said, okay, where does Uncle Dick live? Well, he lived 7 blocks away, but I'd never been to his house. That's how estranged they were. We did not socialize since 64, 65. So I found out he lived 7 blocks, so I knew he lived close by, I didn't know where. And I drove over to his house. He opened the door, cracked, took the book through the crack, closed the door. And I had a pretty good relationship with him, so it was weird. It was like the forbidden zone. And then I dropped one with my dad, and I said, now what do I do? He goes, well, look through it in Song Spot. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, find spots for songs, Jeff. I think he thought it was a little slow. So I went through and I circled, and I'm all excited, and I'm driving down Sunset Boulevard. You know where the Hustler office is there on Sunset? My dad's office building used to be there. In their office was Marilyn Monroe's music teacher who taught her how to sing. So there were some interesting ghosts in this place. It's no longer there. But so I go up the steps, and I'm all excited, but it's really quiet up there. Usually I'd hear music coming out. It's really quiet. I walk up, my dad's sitting behind his desk. It's the office you see in the movie. We took some old archival footage of them in an interview, and that's the office. So my dad's sitting at this big desk with a glass top. My uncle's sitting at the piano like this with his hand on his head, and I walked in, and it was really quiet and tense. And I said, so how's everybody doing? My dad says, let's just jump into it, Jeff. I said, all right. So I kind of awkwardly pulled the chair into the middle of the room. I didn't really know where to sit. And I said, well, I guess I'll start. I was thinking on page 3 here, there's a great spot for a song where the Velveteen Rabbit, and my uncle hits his piano, his keys like this, and he goes, that's the stupidest fucking idea I've ever heard in my life. And I went, what? My dad hits his desk I remember his ring. He had this like a horse nail, horseshoe nail, gold ring, and he hit it and almost cracked the glass. And he stands up and he says, "Dick, you can talk to me like that, but you cannot talk to my son like that." And Dick starts walking. I'm between these two guys. They're in their 50s. They're both big guys. And my uncle's walking. He goes, "Well, if he's going to work with us, he's going to work with us the way that we do." And my dad's very calm, but he says, "Dick, knock it off." And suddenly I'm holding these two guys apart physically. And I'm thinking, this is the worst, ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe this. And my uncle's just fuming. It's the heat coming off of him. And suddenly he goes, snaps his fingers, walks back over to his piano. He starts playing this little happy little melody. My dad lets out this big sigh, looks at me in the eye, shakes his head, goes back to his desk, sits down, pulls out a pad, and they start writing a song called Ribbity Rabbity Run. And so later on, I was horrified. I never wanted to be there again. And I called my dad. I said, "So, Dad," I said, I'm really sorry if something I did brought that on. He goes, "Jeff, that's how we work. We call that Tuesday." And that's how their process was. And I thought, wow, to do that for 60 years.
Wow.
They had to get angry with each other and then get into that space. Pretty interesting. I don't know if it was always anger, but it was always contentious.
Anger, the other side of anger is like creativity. It really is. You ever been fucking pissed and you yell at your dog? Okay?
Oh yeah, or you feel really shitty and angry right before you go on stage, and then you're on stage and you're like, blah.
No, or even when you yell at your dog, you turn around, you're doing dishes, whatever, and all of a sudden you feel bad about yelling at your dog, and while you're yelling at your dog, you're even thinking of like a joke, something. It makes you angry. I know I need to get a little angry before I get on stage. I do a lot better if I'm just a little bit angry at something, even if I have to self-fuck myself, you know what I'm saying? Like that time in the 8th grade when I lost my, something. I have to just go there for a minute.
Right.
But the hotter you get sometimes, the passionate you get. They say smoking inspires creativity, like when you fucking smoke.
Smoking what?
Whatever, carrots, whatever, because your lungs breathe, so it gives life. So, that's another way of looking at it. Who the fuck knows?
Do you have a specific memory of a song that your father was working on when you were a kid that really is the memory you go to when you think about all that music?
Honestly, there's so many. I have different feelings about different songs. I love Feed the Birds. My dad always loved that one. At his funeral, Wendy's and my friend Terry Nunn from Berlin sang Feed the Birds is beautiful. Just killed everybody there. But I have a personal connection to Spoonful of Sugar, which is in the documentary. But my dad had written this song. They wrote 33 songs for Mary Poppins. I think there are 14 or 15 in the movie, but they overwrote. They wrote a lot of stuff and it would get kicked out. But their favorite song, it was one of the earliest songs they wrote, was called Through the Eyes of Love. They loved this song. They thought this was going to be the biggest thing they ever did, and they'd done some things at that point. So they found Julie Andrews on the Ed Sullivan Show. My dad and uncle called each other when they saw her performing and chose her as Mary Poppins. Disney flew out, wooed her to come out with her husband to Los Angeles. She comes out, she listens to all the songs. She loves everything, but she goes separately to Walt and she goes, "I don't really like that Through the Eyes of Love song. I just don't really care for it." And they were heartbroken and they thought, what have we done? We brought this woman, she doesn't like the song we love the most. And I came home, and usually my dad got home from work at about 6 o'clock at night. But he was home right after school about 3:30, and the curtains were all closed. I remember it was just it was so depressing in the house. It looked like somebody had died. And so he sees me come in, and I was almost afraid to talk to him. He had a scotch about like this in front of him in the middle of the day. And he said, "How was your day?" And I had the Salk polio vaccine at school. And I told him that. I said, I had this vaccine. And I was a kid. I was a big kid. And I was famous or notorious in my doctor's office. Because remember, they used to bring out those trays with the booster shots. And you'd have all these things like once a year or whatever. And I would always hit them over and run. Like the poor little nurse would be scared of me. And I'd hit it and I'd run and I'd hide. So my dad couldn't believe I let somebody give me a shot. He said, "You let somebody give you a shot at school? Did it hurt?" And I said, "No, they took out this plastic spoon, they put a sugar cube in it, and they put the medicine on it, and you just ate it." And my dad stared at me for the longest minute, just stared. He started patting his leg like this, and nodding, and he just sort of walked away like in a daze. And the next morning they wrote, "Spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down." So that's my little corner of the Sherman Brothers history. I was the spoonful of sugar boy.
Wow.
Of course, my dad says he went into the office because they were looking for like a phrase like "a stitch in time saves 9" or, well, something like that to make a song about. But my uncle heard this thing, "a spoonful of sugar helps them." What? Oh, that's a stupid. Again, he goes to that place. Stupidest thing. He slammed the lid of his piano and he walked out and he walked back in and he goes, "That's a great idea." And he started playing this melody, "Spoonful of Sugar," and they wrote the song that morning. So it's a pretty big song in the picture now too. It's all through it.
Has Wendy ever written a joke about you?
I think I've unintentionally written them for her. Her act now, I've become sort of like Fang to Phyllis Diller. The one that her mother always, when I sit with her mom at a comedy club, she always pats my hand after this one. Wendy has a joke. She goes, "My husband has a 5-year-old mentality." She always goes, "Oh, I'm sorry." But I inadvertently, come up with things. I say stupid stuff and she works it into her act. So I have to be very careful what I say around her.
Well, you must have been pretty proud of her. She was just on Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I've been to all the late night shows with her, and they're all relatively okay. But Letterman doesn't come back, and Leno came back for a second. But Jimmy Fallon came in, hung with us, told her how much he loved her and how excited he was. He'd been wanting to have her on since the show started, and made her just because she was scared. It's the young hip show, and as if you saw her Showtime special, she just turned. Well, she's now 51, but she had turned 50, and you're worried that maybe you don't have that hip edge. The audience loved her. He even did a wonderful thing that I'd never seen any of them do. They usually, they're just talking to somebody, getting their makeup put on or whatever. Between, when the commercial break was on, he got up to the microphone where Wendy was going to stand. And he walked up and he said, "This is my favorite comedian. She is so wonderful, and you guys are going to love her. Now listen, he just built her up, and then brought her out and was hysterically laughing all the way through it. It was just such a genuinely nice guy. And I'd met Jimmy. This is a fun story about Jimmy Fallon. He had opened for the Monkees. I'm friends with Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees, and 12 years ago, I guess. And I had an overall deal in TV at Disney. And I saw Jimmy open, and he did his song parodies, and he was incredibly good, and just like the same guy he is now, very likable. And so I went backstage afterward, and Mickey and I had been working on a pilot idea, and I told Jimmy about it. I said, "Is this something you might want to do?" He goes, "Oh, I'd love to do a sitcom. It sounds great. So I brought one of my Disney executives back the next night because he was opening for the Monkees again. She loved him, and she went back to the group and recommended it. And they liked the idea. They wanted to do this thing. But what happened was there was some executive there who just said, "I don't get him." I went, "Well, yeah, he's fantastic. He's the most likable everyman. He's terrific. He would have been great on the show. He's exactly right." And he said, "No, it's a pass." 3 months later, Jimmy got Saturday Night Live. So there you go.
There's always a fucking genius.
There is always one bozo in the bunch.
Yeah, he's just great. And he remembered, I reminded him of the thing. He didn't remember me, but he remembered Mickey came to him with an idea. It's a lot of my life. Anyway.
It's really funny how the last 2 weeks you've done something. Every morning I wake up in a good mood and I read what you put up the night before. Like the last 2 or 3 weeks you've been dedicating your Facebook page to your dad, putting up pictures. And, this podcast, the one thing that we have in common is that we suffered a death young, the mother, whatever, and Felicia's mom, my mom, and now your dad, and I really like that you were doing that. It meant a lot to me as a friend. I didn't know you had that in you, It's really weird when somebody's gone, how some people, put it to bed in different ways. You've been writing it out, which is good. You've been writing it out from the beginning, which it makes your life, and I really admire that, and that's why I wanted to have you on here today, because you handled it like a man's man. Some people handle death a little weird. I like what you've been doing lately. It just means a lot to me. I wish I would have done that after my mom died. I wrote a little bit more.
Well, you have since.
Yeah, but 30 years later, you know what I'm saying? That does nothing for you.
Maybe
for
you
the
couldn't
initial.
then,
No,
Yeah.
it's really hard. But just that, every morning when I look at that, it's giving me strength to write. Because you've gone to your darkest corner. A lot of people can't do that.
Well, you actually got me started. You said I helped you, but when you started writing about your life, I went, I've got some interesting things I could tell
Me too, Joey. Yeah.
It's very inspiring, and I was just I always told you that you have to. It's a verbal thing for you. You telling the stories and the person, you just sort of you become the people that you're talking about.
No, we've had a good time. We've had
fantastic.
a good time together. Just it's really weird. For years, I was very ashamed of my past, and then I had to put it out there. It was just too much because I felt that when I would tell stories to guys like you, I'd be ashamed because Jeff is from Beverly Hills. I'm from New Jersey. We have nothing in fucking common. You know what I'm saying? But then we do have so much.
Was there ever a time when you were starting to do, to go on your own path with the Hollywood business and all that, where it was a monkey on your back, that you were the son of one of the Sherman brothers?
Well, interestingly, when I was 17 years old, I've been playing piano since I was about 4 or 5 years old. My grandfather was also a composer back in the Tin Pan Alley days. He wrote for everybody from Billie Holiday to Frank Sinatra to a lot of stuff for Bing Crosby, tons and tons of stuff. But he would give me piano lessons on Sundays. So I was always playing, and I started writing really early too, because it was, in the family, and it was, it was there. So I started writing, and by the time I was 17, I'd written 2 songs that my dad said, these are really good. I have a funny little side story about it with the Captain and Tennille. One of the songs I'd written, and this piano teacher that I went to heard it, and she said, this is, I know Tony Tennille, and they just done Love Will Keep Us Together. And so she said, I think she'd really love this. They're looking for a follow-up song. I'm going, whatever, try it, And she calls, I get a phone call. I meet with the Captain and Tennille by a pool someplace in Beverly Hills. I don't know where. He's wearing the hat. Remember the hat?
Captain and Tennille, yeah.
Definitely. And they said, we love this song. The song is, we'd like to maybe even make it the title song of our next album. I'm like, it's like a dream. I'm 17 years old. This is incredible. And and they said, well, all we want to do is we'll pay you, but we're going to put our names on it because that's how we do things. And I went, I don't know. Let me just talk. So I drove over to my dad's house, and my dad goes, fuck him. I said, excuse me? He goes, you know something, Jeff? There was a time when Elvis Presley did the same thing to me, and I told him to fuck. I said, you didn't let Elvis Presley do your song? He goes, no, you don't. You always keep your name on things. And I always kind of regretted it because I could have had that song done, and it might have taken me down a different path. But so I'd written these 2 songs. I brought them to this one publisher that my dad had recommended, the New York Times Music Publishing Company. It was in this building on Sunset and Vine. And I went up there, and the guy said, well, we've heard your demos of that. We love these songs. We're going to publish them. I said, well, that's fantastic. 17 years old, I'm published, got into BMI, the whole thing. And so I go, and about 6 months, 7 months, 8 months go by. Nothing's happened with my songs at all. And so I made an appointment to see this guy again. It took me like, I'll see you in 2 weeks kind of a thing. So I go up. He's rushed. He's on the phone. He goes, what did you want? I said, well, I'm just wondering what's happening with my songs. He goes, oh, Jeff, didn't you realize we did that as a favor to your dad? And it got in my, he said, he probably wrote these, right? And he's just trying to help you out. I said, no, I wrote them. And I walked out of there, and it was just like this rug was pulled out. I was so high on myself, and I went, okay, I can't go into the music business. And I played and written music. It's my secret passion. I've done it all my life. I've got tons and tons, hours of songs and melodies and things I've written. And I put a couple things in when I worked on Boy Meets World. I put a few songs in there, and different places I've used them, but just kind of I kind of hide and I throw them in the ring there. It's interesting. A little thing happened for me right after my dad passed away, and somebody told me this might happen. You become sort of suddenly empowered. You're not somebody's son, really. Both my parents are gone now, and I thought, I could go out with my music. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll try it because it really. I think it's pretty good. If you're at my house about 2 a.m, you'll hear me playing. When everybody's asleep, really softly. Or on headphones, but I think I might go and stick my music out there again. I might do that.
I think you absolutely should. You get to a point in life, like for myself, I was a stripper when I was 18. That's how I got into comedy.
Me too.
Really? and
Jeff cracking funny.
I used to always like not talk about it, and I would be embarrassed, and now lately I'm like, you know what, I'm 40 something years old, like I want to fucking own it, and not in a creepy way. I did this, hooker with hooker with a golden heart kind of story or anything like that. But I was a stripper, and you get to a point where you want to talk about the experiences you have, or you want to let go of whatever deep secret you have, because what's the point? You're not here to impress people anymore. You're just here to live your life the way you see fit and to grow as a person.
Right.
Anyway.
No, I agree. I think that's a fantastic thing. How long did you strip?
Well, here's I was just writing about it, but I stripped for about I did it when I was 18, and then I did it for about a year, and that's how I met a comedian, and then when I moved to LA, I couldn't I had done a little bit of comedy, but I couldn't get onto stage because I think I was 19 at the time, and so I didn't, I had to get a job, so I was like, fuck it. So I worked down at the airport by the jet strip. You've probably been there.
That's where I know you from.
But it was a really it was a crazy fucking place, and it was owned by gangsters. We've talked about it all before in the past. And there used to be like this DJ, and his name was Buzz, and he was like this old guy, and they had like records, and it wasn't like it is today. Like today, if you're a stripper, you're like a fucking a god of rock, but showing your titties. But then it was old school, like biker chicks, grizzled, sunburnt biker chicks, and they would beat the shit out of you, and chicks from Compton. It was kind of hard, but it was also like a great time in my life, because I never did drugs at that point, and so I really got to experience it in a really interesting way. I mean, it really gave me power in my life when I had no power, and because it was the power of sexuality, understanding your sexuality, but it also gave me the means to have money and pay my rent and do comedy. I did it during the day. I was that chick. I stripped during the day. I would serve cheeseburgers and then show you my pussy on stage later. I never showed my pussy because I never trimmed my bush, so all they saw was hair. Joey's like rolling his eyes, but I'm just trying to make the conversation flow.
I didn't even know that you served lunch and showed your little monkey. That's a whole different.
Yeah, why would anyone order a cheeseburger in a strip joint anyway? Is beyond all.
Well, if I could order a cheeseburger and see somebody's pussy, why go to McDonald's? You know what I'm saying? Then you could put Mick in front of anything. I'm still not gonna fucking
McPussy.
McPussy. Fucking go. You know what I'm saying?
My old writing partner Doug and I, he loved strip clubs. He just loved, and what he would do is he'd go and he'd just start talking to the stripper while she was doing it, which is probably the worst thing in the world. But so we went down to that place, Star Strip on La Cienega. During the day, that same kind of thing. And usually, like I guess at night it was crowded. I don't personally really like the places that kind of depressed me, but he really loved them. Sorry, Doug, if you're listening. And he would tell you too, actually. And so we were sitting there, and he starts talking to this girl, and she's getting really annoyed with him. And she like looks over at the guy, and the bouncer walks over. And because we weren't tipped, we had no money. We were these starving writers. We were just writing spec scripts, hoping somebody would buy something. And so so we're just keeping the minimal thing. Like once in a while we'll put $1 down, but that's all we could do. And so this guy walks over, he goes, you got to tip the girls. And Doug said, I'm sorry, I didn't see that sign when we walked in, because that's who Doug is. And he goes, so what, you guys work for free? And Doug goes, as a matter of fact, we do. And then we got kicked out, and we didn't go back there again.
When I first moved here, I moved here with a girl that danced, that she was an exotic dancer. And the first place she went to, as a matter of fact, 20 years later, she's still dancing in Florida. And she danced at the Star Strip. And I would have to go pick her up right from the Comedy Store. Like, I'd just be getting, like, the later my spot, the better. You follow me? So my spot was at 1:45. That means I went up at 1:30, which is I'm getting off, and I just shoot down La Cienega, pick her up, and go home, And I'll never forget when I first moved here, I left the Comedy Store. It was whatever. I was in the main room. I probably died a slow death. I mean, everybody has gone to Star Strip. I've never been to another strip club in L.A. That's the only, I'm not
really?
a big, that one down the corner from the store they tried to burn down last year. The Arabs tried to burn it down on Christmas Eve. What was that one? Right there by the store. Right on Sunset. Yeah.
Oh, the Seventh Veil?
Yeah. No. The Seventh Veil is a little down more. This one's right by the store next to Sushi.
Yeah, Sushi. Oh, yeah.
They burnt the cigarettes on the couches.
The Body Shop is?
The Body Shop. Anyway, I leave the Comedy Store and I go to pick her up.
Wonder why you know that,
Jeff
Jeff Sherman.
I'll never forget. This is the creepiest, because I'm not a strip club guy. I went to big time strip clubs when I was a kid, and then went later on. And after you see a girl stick a banana in her pussy, these new ones, they're not gonna cut it. You know what I'm saying? You dancing with a bikini ain't gonna cut it for me. I saw a girl sit on a Galliano bottle, so I'm not a strip club guy. So I go to this fucking, to pick up Carol was her name. And I get the car and I go in, and I would go in and tell the old man, there's like a creepy old man that works there, Lou or something, he's Albanian, and he would tell the girls. And I go in and I see her and she's walking towards me. She goes, come back. I think I told you this, Felicia. And I go in there and it's right before he died. Farley.
Oh, Chris Farley?
They have a little area because I think they serve booze, and if they're naked, they can't touch you. You know, there's different variances. At this situation, the chick was completely naked, and there was like a police thing around her. And she was dancing, and Chris Farley had like a jacket, a shirt. His hair was combed back, but he was sweating by the gallon. It was coming out of him, and he was just taking the money and throwing it at her and giggling. And I remember seeing this and going, holy fuck, this is what Hollywood was all about. And then weeks later, he probably died or something. But that's my only experience with that fucking Star Strip. That's the kiss of death, that place.
Was it odd when you produced Wendy's special?
It was really fun. What happened was Wendy Liebman, my wife, she wanted to. She was turning 50, and so when I turned 50, she had sort of a dinner party for me. So I said, "Do you want to have like a dinner party?" She said, "No." I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" She goes, "I want to do my first hour special." She'd done a half-hour HBO thing back in the 90s, I think, but she hadn't really done one in a long time. And so she said, for my 50th, that's what I want to do. I said, not Hawaii, or she goes, no, I want to do this. So I was, I said, well, first of all, write a script. I said, you have to write it. You can't just go up there and do your thing. And I said, look, my biggest contribution, I think, was I said, you do a lot of things. She's kind of famous for her tweets. And she's written essays and all these different things. I said, work some of that into it, and also let's get like your parents in this. And she said, doing what? And so I called her parents. Her mom, I know, her mom's this little tiny woman, but just wonderful. But she plays the drums, and she plays them hard like Gene Krupa. She's like really hitting them hard. And I've seen her do it. I said, let's have her do that, and let's have your dad come out, because her dad sings with Ivy League University a cappella groups. So I said, let's get some version of his group out here too. She goes, I don't. So I called them. They were all into it. They love forever that she's made fun of them. So now they actually get to show up. So and then I was I'm friendly with John Landis. We've talked about that. And John, I interviewed for the boys for the documentary, and we stayed friends after that. And I was he asked me what I was working on, and I said, I'm going to do Wendy's show. He goes, are you directing it? And I said, I don't really want to, because I've never done a live thing. And he goes, well, let me get you with a really good director of photography. So John had done the Don Rickles Mr. Warmth documentary a couple years ago before this, and he had this great director of photography, Tom Clancy, not the writer, but the terrific DP. So we were having breakfast with him, and in the middle of it, I see John just looking like this because he's hearing me talk about it. He goes, "Okay, screw it, I'll direct this."
Wow. And
he ended up, I'm not sure about where this podcast goes, but he produced it with me, and Wendy directed it, and because there were some technical things with that, with the Directors Guild and all this, it became too complicated. But he was there all the way through it, and he reunited with George Folsey, who was his partner forever on all of his famous movies, everything from the first one he did, all the way through Coming to America, I think, all those movies, Animal House and Blues Brothers, and George was his editor and then became his producer. So he called George because we did everything out of pocket when we made it, and he called George and asked if we could get an editing system. He goes, I'll do better. You can get an editor with it. So George Folsey, who cut all those great movies, came down and cut it with his partner, Brad Wilhite, who works in the company with him. And we worked in Brad's garage. We cut the whole thing in a garage. And we had finished it, and Showtime said they were interested in the show, but they said they had to see it first. That's the way they do things. And so, I couldn't even get a loan. I couldn't get a letter from them, nothing. They wouldn't put anything in writing. But so John and I both went up to the acquisitions head's office, and we showed him the finished show. And halfway through, he stopped it, and John and I looked at each other like, oh, he's not going to buy. He goes, first of all, I'm buying this. He said, I love this. He goes, John, you are my favorite director ever. I should have a big picture of you on my wall behind. I can't believe you're sitting in my office. And he goes, and Jeff, I've wanted to be with your wife for the last 20 years. So I went, okay, well, you can't do that, but you can have her special. And so he bought it right there. And then he said, I want to watch the rest, and he watched the second half. So it was great, and it's terrific because it really shows sides of Wendy you don't see when she just does stand-up. You really get a personal side of her, and you really see who she is. And that, I think, is a really a great model for comedians to do things like that. Like you're saying, the parts of you that you can't really escape from, they partly define you. Mm-hmm. And people want to know those things. It's interesting. Everything you've told me about your life goes into your comedy, and you've taken, the lemons and made lemonade. You have
to. I mean, what else? I had nothing else working, so I might as well throw that out there.
So I think it's interesting. It's a really great way to kind of, don't just go up and have the microphone and get down and that's the end of your show. Give a little bit of yourself too. Go into, it doesn't have to be. Wendy's is maybe 10%. More dramatic kind of stuff about her and just the way she feels and her philosophies, but it kind of informs the jokes and the whole experience of seeing her, and people have said that to us tons of times, so I think it was really successful. I was proud of her.
Is it hard for you when Wendy travels so much?
Yes. It's interesting.
How much does she travel? What was the height of it?
Well, when I first met her, she was working every weekend.
How long have you been together?
13 years.
Wow.
And
so 97, 98, around there, right? 99.
Yeah, 99, 98. And that was really hard because I was, I think she likes it because she can sleep in when she's in a hotel room, and at home, it's like morning and getting the kids up and doing all that stuff. But it is tough. It's just you kind of get used to it. I always think I have it easy because if you watch on the news, you watch the military wives and husbands where they're with the kids and they go off overseas and they don't know what's going on with them. At least I can call her at the Ramada Inn and find out what she's doing. So it's not that bad. But I used to travel with her a lot more than I do now, just because it's hard to get away. We have dogs and kids. So.
Well, my last question I have for you is, you have produced quite a few movies and TV shows. What is it that you really want to do next? Like, if you had any secret thing to do, what would it be?
Well, music is one thing that I probably will do. I've been writing a musical about Edgar Allan Poe for the last 15 or 16 years, and it's almost there. But there's what I've decided to do. I started a company back when I was doing the documentary. Joey, our project was one of the first things we did through the company, but it's sort of taken me away from writing, which is really next to music. Writing, scripts is my first love. I love it. I go places. I'm in that place wherever I go. So I've become sort of a manager and a producer, and on Wendy's show I was driving the camera truck and doing the post-production. I love all that stuff too. It's interesting to me, but the passion I feel is for really expressing myself, communicating. So I'm working on 2 screenplays right now. I usually write 2 at once because I'll get bored with one and I'll go to the other one and back and forth. But so that would be my main goal right now, is to really get back in to feature writing. I think is where I want to go. I've written a lot of TV recently. But I would like to get back into the long form. I love that journey of climbing that mountain with a screenplay. So pretty soon I'll have those done and I'll go out with them and see what happens.
Wow, well, thank you so much for coming by and doing this with us. And I'm so sincere when I say I saw the documentary and I was like, whoa, really? We got to get him on the show. And thank you for finally coming over.
My pleasure.
And now for a word from our beautiful sponsors. For starters, this is the last week of Adam and Eve that they'll be with us. But do us a favor, they'll be back as usual. Go over to adamandeve.com. They got some great stuff this week. They're advertising the Click Dancer. the mini massager, tickle your clit for free. You got the Trojan Midnight, the collection. You got the women's and men's toys. You got $10 for free to sign up on the email list. You got lingerie, you got lube, you got DVDs. You got it all. You got blue fucking dolphins. You got everything. Go to adamandeve.com and get something. Press in Felicia in the box and get 15% off. FELICIA. Also a shout out to my beautiful sponsors, taintedvisionart.com. I love you motherfuckers. Go to Tainted Vision Arts. Go to the Beauty and the Beast section. They've got the Game of Death doll, the final figures, and they got the new tour posters. They got David Bowie that'll rock your fucking world, and a Led Zeppelin and somebody else that'll rock your world. And beside that, I'd like to thank Jeff Sherman. I'd like to give a shout out to my man jrcustoms.com for all your shirt needs. He's going to be doing our shirts pretty soon. And that's it. Felicia, where you going next week? You going anywhere?
I'm actually going to be in Chattanooga starting April 12th and at the Comedy Catch. And I would also like to remind people, if you are going to buy something off Amazon.com, do us a big fat fucking favor and go to our page. And there's a banner on our page, an Amazon banner. If you click on that Amazon banner, it'll take you right to Amazon. And it just notifies Amazon that you heard our advertisement here. We would love if you could do that. Please also, if you have a moment, I know you're busy, who isn't, go to iTunes, go to Beauty and the Beast, and why don't you write a little bit of a review? If we've made you laugh or if we've made you have a nice little thought in the last couple of months, why don't you go on there and give us a review, because that helps us get up higher in the numbers for the What's Hot list.
That's right. We've been hot lately because Felicia's hot, and that's all that matters.
I am not hot. I've been eating too many cookies lately.
You look good, Felicia.
My
Little
God,
ass
you're
is
gonna
coming
rub my
back.
tummy
It's
later.
making a comeback.
I
and
know.
shit.
I know.
And don't forget to tell people I'll be at the Miami Improv this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 305-441-8200 for all your tickets. And also I want to give a shout out to the Chino crew out of Pasadena who came out to the show, and they love Felicia and myself, so I want to give them a shout out.
Also, I wanted to tell everybody, did you know, Joey, I read this somewhere, that if you get 10,000 subscribers on a blog, that helps you to get a book deal. So I'm making a challenge to everyone out there in Beauty and the Beast land. Go to our website, go to our blogs, go to Joey's blog and subscribe to it so Joey can get a book deal.
That's right.
I thought about that this week for you,
Thank
Joey.
you, guys. You're a beautiful, sexy motherfucker.
And
Jeff, love you.
And if you think about it, go to mine. I have one subscriber. I have
go
one
with-
fucking subscriber somewhere in Australia. That motherfucker loves me.
That's right. He does. A couple people love you. Thank you very much for listening. We know you have a lot of choices. Stay black. Love you. Mwah.
Mwah.
Throw a kiss, Jeff Sherman. Cocksucker.